It's AM 650's The Law Show, a comprehensive look at everything you need to know about the law. Now, here's Sterling Fox.
Well, good morning. Happy New Year. Glad you made it. Welcome to The Law Show here on AM 650 as we welcome our lawyers from Lindsay Kenney in Vancouver back to the program. Angela Thiel is a partner with Lindsay Kenney, and Christine Eilers is an associate with the firm. Welcome and Happy New Year to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And happy birthday to you, too.
Well, I thought you'd never remember. That's very kind. Thank you. Interesting season. Tomorrow, the kids are back to school. Tomorrow is January 6th, and in a lot of religions and cultures, that's officially the end of the holiday cycle. What in family, we're talking family law on this episode of The Law Show, and we'll talk about the new Family Law Act that is still very new in British Columbia, but I just want to get a sense from a couple of family lawyers what your business is like at the end of the year, around Christmas and the end of the year. Angela, you're the senior of this duo. You've been at it longer, so what's it like at Christmas in the family law biz?
It's a very sad time for a lot of people, and it's a time that's really full of conflict for a lot of families. You either have the families that have just separated and they're trying to negotiate how they're going to manage the holiday traditions, how they're going to split their time. Mm-hmm. And because it's so immediate, people can't sort of go, well, if I do this Christmas, then next Christmas it will be reversed, which is the norm. Sure. They can't think past, you mean my kids aren't going to sit down to grandma's turkey dinner, they're going to sit down to my mother-in-law's turkey dinner on Christmas Day. Right. And then even for clients who may have been separated a number of years and may have had an agreement, sometimes they've repartnered. So now you've got a blended family and different traditions and different time frames in terms of, well, we do this on Christmas Eve. So the family who says, we've been going to, midnight mass or the midnight carol singing on Christmas Eve at this church for a long, long time. This is the children's tradition. Right. And the other parent says, well, yes, but I'm not getting Christmas dinner, so my family is having Christmas dinner on Christmas Eve, and I don't want to bring the kids back I want them to spend the night. Sure. And depending on the ages of the kids, of course, Christmas morning is very important.
Rather. For kids of all ages, frankly, Angela, but the little ones especially.
Well, when I'm doing this, unfortunately, I've had kids of all ages now. So when you're doing a split, so the standard traditional thing for me is I say, well, let's split Christmas Day. You have Christmas Eve to Christmas morning. He has Christmas evening through to Boxing Day, and then you'll turn around the next year. Right. So what time do you split on Christmas Day? Now, if you have a 2 and a 4-year-old, because the kid can't quite figure it out, but let's say 5 and a 7-year-old, they're going to be up at 5 a.m. And look at their presents. My teenagers, as they got to be teenagers, it was hard to get them out of bed and to be interested in, mom and dad would like to do the presents because mom has to start cooking the turkey.
That's right. Been there.
So, my client's saying to me as a lawyer, well, when should we move them? I said, how old are the kids? Let's see. So what time, what are your traditions? What do you want to do here? Do you have a family brunch or something like that? Okay, you should move your kids between the families at 2. Right. And people say, I can't wait till 2 o'clock to see my kids. Well, but next year, that's when you're gonna switch. Can you think of next year? And is this something that you'd be prepared to do alternating year after year? But that very first Christmas to say, can you think of next year? Right.
It's such an emotional high point. In my business, in the radio business, just sitting here, and I didn't do it this year because I'm on the senior staff, and others do it now, but I've had my turns on Christmas Day, and if it's so sentimental, and it's so family oriented, and it's so warm and fuzzy and wonderful. If you're not in a circumstance that is all about, boy, do you ever have a terrible day on Christmas Day. And a lot of people call the radio stations and they're not happy, and we're sympathetic, and so you must, so that's how it goes in my business. Christine, is Christmas something that when people when a marriage or a relationship goes south, is Christmas something that gets negotiated or even thought of in the heat of the moment, or is it something that, oh my gosh, we separated in July,
Yep.
and we never even thought about Christmas, and now here it is December 15th, and what the heck are we going to do?
Well, as Angela was saying, I mean, if you do think about it, there are things that you can do, and there's logical ways of breaking Christmas up so that the kids kind of can get used to new traditions and see both parents. But sometimes you're right, they leave it too late, and they haven't figured it out, and it's just a fight, or they're not talking, or there was some family violence that started the split, and they have to go to court, basically, to figure out Christmas.
Okay.
Unfortunately. I mean, that happens a lot, where this one party wants to go on a trip at Christmas and the other party doesn't want to allow that to happen because they can't imagine a Christmas without their children at all.
Right.
And the court is full of this stuff in December, November, December, leading up to Christmas, unfortunately.
Right. And Angela, now that we're past Christmas and just barely into the new year, what is January like in the family law business? If Christmas is emotionally fraught, what is January like?
January is when we see a lot of new clients who didn't make it through Christmas because of family disputes.
Yeah.
Meaning Christmas seems to bring out the best in people and the worst in people. And if there's cracks in a relationship, sometimes the enforced togetherness causes those cracks to become more evident. Sometimes more alcohol at Christmas causes that same issue. Sometimes the mother-in-law just says that thing that, that you just say, if your mother says that one more time,
right.
And you don't support me, and tell your mother to just, bog off. You need to choose, whether I'm more important to you than your mother.
And then there's one mother that a little bit of misbehaving at the office Christmas party that probably didn't help either.
The alcohol, as she mentioned.
That sometimes does happen. But it's interesting. I don't find as many marriages break up because of infidelity as break up, at least in terms of the people we see, than break up because of the day-to-day frustrations of people that just haven't managed to sort of get past this will be the deal breaker for me.
Right.
And the thing about Christmas is not necessarily the infidelity, but the fact that that's a time that people want to be happy. And if they realize they're not happy, that is sometimes what brings them to a lawyer in January.
Yeah, the awareness around it, I guess, is high.
Okay, and so new clients, or in some cases, would it be old clients with new problems?
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't like the
schedule didn't go according to plan. Or
I mean,
there was
it used to be when I was a young lawyer. You'd think you could just draft each party gets half of the Christmas school break with the children.
Yeah. Yeah.
And each party, gets they all get alternating Christmas days. But then what happens is that the Christmas school breaks, because of where Christmas doesn't break evenly into halves. Or
so there's an extra day.
Yeah.
Who gets that?
Yeah.
Or you've got a late Christmas, so like this year, the 20th, it will be probably the last school day for everybody. And Christmas comes on the 25th, and the break is about 2 weeks long. So now you only got 5 days at the front end.
Oh, right, and longer at the other side.
So now I draft, after 30-some years, each person will have alternating halves of the Christmas. You'll count the first 5 days till Christmas Day, and the person that gets the first half will get till 2 o'clock Christmas Day. And the next person will get the next 5 overnights, and then you'll even it up over here. And that's what we call we'll have a default position in our agreement.
Right.
If the two of you can't figure it out, you can negotiate, but if you can't figure it out, you go back to this default, which most people don't like. So they usually try to figure it out.
Then they get smart and get working on it. I wanted to ask you both, and this is just not specific to this time of year, but when relationships go sour, when people break up, the popular mythology has it to be usually about money. Now, you already talked about infidelity, Angela, but couples fight a lot about money. Is it usually about money in your experience, Christine?
I don't know if I'd say usually, but frequently.
Yeah?
I would say.
It's often sort of more control over money.
Yeah.
Like they'll fight over, or who's making it, who's spending it, so they and control over it. So, and again, that's the type of thing that comes out at Christmas.
Yes.
I was reading in the paper the other day that they have this column, Parent Trap, and this fellow writes in and he says, look, Christmas is coming up, and since we've split up, my ex's family, just totally throws money and toys at the kids.
Right.
And I don't think that's good, so I'm trying not to do the same thing, but then my kids are disappointed that they don't, get the expensive presents at my house. How do I handle that situation? And frankly, I'm waiting for the answer because, I've been doing this a long time, and that's a fairly constant complaint.
Okay.
People say, well, I'm we have two bicycles. The kids have a, bicycle at his house and a bicycle at my house.
Yes, I've heard that, yeah.
Or he insists on buying our kids these really violent video games that I just don't want in my home. And I'm thinking, I'm a lawyer. I can't, I had that argument with my, my own, spouse and my own family members. I didn't like Barbies for my kids.
Right, right.
I couldn't figure that one
But
out.
they're really more, I think, disagreements about parenting.
They're disagreements
as
about
opposed to
parenting.
money.
Right.
Yeah, that come
Right.
come out in a disagreement about spending. And if there's no kids, the disagreements about, someone has perhaps decided that they wanted to have a traditional relationship. They didn't want a wife that went out to work.
Right, yeah.
But money's tight now, and they can't afford what they could afford, and they're trying to talk to their spouse about
Maybe re-entering the workforce?
re-entering the workforce.
Sure, right.
And she can't contemplate, because she's fearful. Well, her skills are 10 years old.
Right, she's just been out too long.
Yeah.
And a little insecure about it.
And what's that going to do to the kids?
Right.
They go to extracurricular activities 3 days a week. So that type of money discussion will come up. How are we going to? We need to expand our pool of money because I'm not doing. Things are getting more expensive. This idea that we could. Have someone stay home for the first 10 years of our kids' lives. Well, maybe it's time to go back to work.
And then when they separate, because of that the same argument continues just
Yeah.
in the separation with regards to spousal support. Whether the wife will go back to work or not in order to become self-sufficient, and how much money that the husband would have to pay her. Of course, it could be reversed.
Now, some of these matters get resolved, at least in our province, under the umbrella of the new Family Law Act, which is less than a year old. It just came into being March 2013, so we're about 10 months into this experiment, because new law really is experimental in many ways. It's well-intended, perhaps not even well-written in some cases, but it's experimental in nature, isn't it, Angela?
And I'm not going to say it's not well written, because there was a lot of work that went into it. But what's interesting is what judges have had to do in practice, trying to figure out, well, this is what was likely intended, but maybe the parts behind it that we needed to sort of put in place to make sure what was intended was there. So, for example, there's a very interesting case of some poor judge who's saying, well, it says here that if you want to exercise a parenting relationship and you haven't yet, you need a criminal record check.
Okay.
Well, where do we get that? Because and the judge, I can't remember if it was male or female, goes through at great detail the fact that every different jurisdiction in the Lower Mainland has different rules for criminal record checks, how you get them, what you'll get, whether it'll be at all useful, and says, it was a good idea. It was well-intentioned that we should know about these things, but we need to put something in place.
Okay. So is this a work in progress then, Christine? Obviously, the legislation stands,
Exactly.
but it's going to be fine-tuned along the way, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, the legislation itself may not change, but judges will interpret sections of the Act and will give us guidance as to how we can apply them. And also the rules, the court rules, and the procedures around how to actually implement the law will change and develop over time.
Angela, why did we bring in the new Family Law Act in the first place? What was wrong with the old one?
I think it's fair to say that BC was an anomaly in the sense that we we had a lot of disputes over what I had coming in to our marital or common law relationship, and those had to be determined based on judicial discretion. And then the second thing is BC was a bit of an anomaly, and we didn't recognize property division in common law relationships.
Oh.
And so what they've done, in my view, in the new act is they've taken a lot of problem areas that were causing a lot of people to spend money in litigation, and they've said, this is what it's going to be. You may not like it, but now we're going to put some objective parameters in these things that caused us difficulty before.
There's a new template for
Exactly.
everybody to share.
Well, that's the idea, I think, is that it's supposed to work for more people more of the time.
Yeah.
It still won't work for everyone, but at least it sort of makes a little bit more sense for the majority of couples.
And it takes litigious issues out of, it says to people,
Discretion.
it says, well, there's going to still be judicial discretion,
Right.
but it's going to be exercised much less often because the framework, the template's going to be clearer. So if you want to go to litigation, there's fewer things to go to litigation about.
Okay.
Because it's, you're going to have an issue that's really, really big before you'll say, well, let's go see what a judge will decide.
Okay, our two guests are litigators themselves. They are family lawyers, and they do show up in court quite frequently. Angela Thiel and Christine Eilers are with us from Lindsay Kenney LLP in Vancouver. Online, by the way, at lklaw.ca. We're talking family law here on The Law Show, and we'll be back with lots more after this.
This is AM 650's The Law Show. There's more of the show still ahead.